Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Second Level Questions. My guest is TJ Denman. He is a great friend of mine. He is the staff pastor, next gen pastor at Chapel Springs AG here close to the office, and he is one of the best people I have ever met at talking. Just meeting a new person, he'll make a friend with a rock if there's no one else around. And I think he's the best person to help us understand how we can be better talkers. You'll hear about that later. And gives us specific tips as well as what's the heart behind how do we have better conversations. Hope you enjoy. So we did that last season. And then this season I'm pumped because it's the first time that we're way ahead of it.
That's awesome.
So, like, the guests I'm really excited about, like, we just got Peter Reeves for 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
He's going to come on, and then we're going to put his out before camp.
Oh, nice.
Stuff like that. So,
because he's speaking at camp, right?
Yes. So you know, that kind of like being way more intentional with who we're getting, where we're getting, what we're talking about.
Even when you're releasing it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, where we started the podcast, and it was, I just want to have cool people that I enjoy talking to. I want to highlight students, and so to see that stay the core, but add some
other intentional pieces.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So it's cool. Not very many things in my job or life just get better. This is one of the few things I'm like, hey, it's just getting a little better every time, awesome. And there's no expectations for it.
And are you having fun with it?
Blast. That's what makes it easy. I told another guy who was like wanting to start a podcast, I was like, if you want to start a podcast to like get a following, monetize it, whatever, don't ask me how to do it.
Okay. Because
that's not ever what I've wanted to do, and I don't know how to do that. You know, if you want to start something that's fun and life-giving for yourself and, you know, and then you leverage that with people, that's what we get to do. So.
I love how your heart in this is to train kids how to do whatever they're trying to do, right? So today, better conversationalists, helping them know how to navigate the different health crises that they might be in. It's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, it's interesting because the people ask, like, well, who listens to the podcast? I'm like, well, it's students, but pastors are listening too.
Yeah.
So even when we talk about things, you have that hybrid. And I didn't like that at first, but then I thought, what is another format? What's another workshop where you get those two groups together on equal footing?
Okay.
Not very often.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot.
Yeah, we don't really do like, all right, pastors and students come in and we're going to talk about this thing and process it together. As soon as you get them in the same room, pastors become leaders and students. So I like this because it's the same information. We give it just like we're talking to someone who might be interested. Doesn't matter if they're 16 or 65.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool. So it's been cool to hear the same podcast from a pastor and a student. They've both listened, their feedback on it, and it creates a cool conversation. So
do you get to hear much from your listeners about what their thoughts are and where they want you to grow and what they want you to focus on?
Not feedback digitally, but in person.
Okay. When
we go visit, that's when they pop out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
You know, and that they're like, yeah, I listened to this one and that was great. And it's really cool. So it's fun. We enjoy it. So this is your camera.
Okay.
That's my camera.
Nice.
And obviously that's a wide shot. So if you want to do like a gym from the office, and that's your camera to do it too.
That's exactly what we say.
So, all right. What are we talking about? Today we're talking about
how to have better conversations.
Conversations, which is funny because we have a workshop called Having Better Conversations, but it's all about your faith. This one, I'm not really talking about how to leverage your faith or transition. I'm just talking about how not to be a weirdo.
Yeah.
Because, and agree or disagree, I think students right now have a lower threshold for awkwardness.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
And they get really weird really fast. You know, I'll come in to speak somewhere or whatever, and it's like they don't know how to talk.
Well, I think it's not just like they don't like awkwardness, but they avoid it like anything.
Like the plague.
So if having a new conversation with someone that they don't know, that feels so aversive that they just don't want to face that.
At all.
Yeah, yeah.
They'll text it, though.
They'll text it.
What is the breakdown there?
Well, I think you're not having to have the face-to-face interaction of this is awkward before us,
Mm-hmm.
you're not dealing with the awkwardness. You are able to have awkward pauses and not have any of that.
That's true.
To be dealt with.
The silence
Yeah.
of, is there anything worse than being in a car with someone that you have nothing else to say to?
No, it's pretty bad. Have you, there's like this one interview with, I think, Jonah Hill, and he's talking about a movie he was making with Morgan Freeman where he's riding in the car with him for days, and they're like shooting this thing. And in between takes, Morgan Freeman has not talked to him at all.
Oh my gosh.
And he's just like, what do I suck or whatever? And then just randomly at like day 2, Morgan Freeman says one thing to him, and that was it.
That was it.
And he's like, it was the most awkward experience of my life. And I'm like, yeah, I can completely get why that would suck so much. And so I am super passionate about this because a lot of people, when they meet me now as like a 36-year-old, they look at me and they see that I'm pretty good with talking to people.
You're a good talker.
And getting to know people right out the gate is probably where I'm like, that's my sweet spot. Like, if I've never met you before, I can kind of get to know you pretty well.
Yeah.
But this was not my story as a high schooler. And I really kind of learned this as a skill.
Okay.
As a high schooler, I was very introverted, but I was an introvert who longed to be an extrovert. It wasn't like I was an introvert by choice. That was just kind of the default because I was awkward and I didn't want to necessarily have to face that feeling. Even back then, I didn't want to do that. And so it was interesting how this has been something that I think it's cool because anyone can grow in this skill. The ability to talk to people and have good conversations. It's not something that some people are just innate at. There's people that have more of an ability with it, but it is definitely something that people can learn and get better at if they just choose to put a little bit of time, put a little bit of effort into it, and have a couple of skills that can be put in your back pocket.
Now, skills because I think sometimes skills and practices maybe are different things, but both can be worked on. Like, does practice lead to skills? Because the way that I've always thought of it is like people who are talented, and then you have skills that you kind of do, and then you have practices that you do to build those skills.
Yeah.
You know, my son is 5 years old, and right now he's trying to play basketball. He might not be the most talented basketball kid. There's one kid on his team,
Allen Iverson.
Oh my gosh. It's like he was dribbling a ball out the womb, right? But it's like, okay, well, if you want to practice, you can earn some of these skills. But I think we all want to be talented.
Yeah.
And if we're not talented in a particular area, we kind of give up. And
we don't like to work to get better.
Yes. Or go through like that awkward realization of like, oh, this isn't easy.
No.
You know, which I'm not special, which I think that's where I kind of landed sometimes was I was like, if I'm not special, then is it worth me even doing it if I can't be great at it? But you're saying that it's stuff you can practice, you can get good at. It wasn't your natural thing.
No.
What led you to getting good at it?
Well, for me, I went to a Bible school that we did a lot of traveling, and we would go to different places and we would interact with different people. And so part of when we would show up at a different church or a different community event, we would be trying to minister to people and trying to connect with them. And so we were put in these places that twice a week, I was meeting a brand new group of people.
Gotcha.
And so in that setting, I just had to learn how to get by and how to connect.
How not to be a weirdo.
Yeah, how not to be a weirdo and how not to feel awkward in any conversation.
Did you go to public school?
So I did go to public school, but I was definitely just put my head down, get through the day, and longed for the weekends, longed for the times, because most of my deep connections were from church. Yeah. And so I would go and I was fine at school. It wasn't like I was like an awkward individual, but it was more that I just didn't enjoy the people there. And so that was a bit selfish, right? Yeah. So, and that's one of the things that you have to learn in great conversations is that you have to learn to care about the other person.
All right. I think that's a good transition because that takes us to if you're listening and you want to be a better talker, how do you become a better?
That's a great word, by the way.
Thank you. You know, I think you're allowed to make up words.
Oh, I do.
On the first
every sermon.
4th season of your podcast,
Yes.
You can start making up your own words. So how do you become a better talker? Like, let's start with the basics.
Yes.
Because this is the stuff most people roll their eyes at. But if you get good at them, it will change how you talk to people.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you have to be a good listener.
Agreed.
Yeah, you have to pay attention. And for me, I'm ADD. I struggle with that type of focus, and like, so we can be talking and I can hear Jonathan over here and be like, okay, what's going on with him? What's he doing fidgeting over there? And like,
I watch it on your eyes. Sometimes when we're like at lunch, you're like, and I'm like, I lost him. This story wasn't good enough. I judge myself. I'm like,
and it's a real struggle for me. Like that is potentially my biggest hiccup in connecting with people is because
they're just not interesting enough.
Well, no, it's not that they're just not interesting enough, but like my disposition, my brain will go places instantly. I can have like 30 thoughts in a span of 5 seconds if my brain just goes.
You're ADHD, right?
Yeah.
So I also see the world in HD, and I only want every third word that you have. I don't care to hear everything. I know where you're going with this. Exactly. Most of the time, like ADD brains, you can kind of recognize patterns typically. So I'm like, I get it. I get what you're trying to get. Like podcasts, I would never listen to this podcast, which I help record. I would never listen to it not in 2 times speed.
Yeah. Yeah, I listen to everything in 2 times
Everything's got to be 2 times speed.
Exactly.
Jonathan, sitting behind the camera, he was trying to listen to a podcast with me in the car. He was like, how do you understand what's going on? I'm like, you get it. Like, you get what they're saying.
Yeah.
And if they say something really good, you can always slow it down and rewind it.
Back, yeah.
But it's like, other people don't think that way.
No.
So I do have the same issue where I'm like, get to the end.
So for me, I have to focus on what's being said and not processing what I'm going to say in the midst of
not preparing your response.
Yeah, because that's what we do. Like, like popcorn prayers. Like, you remember that?
Yep.
You're supposed to be praying with the people, but I'm thinking, okay, how can I sound good in the midst of this prayer?
Yes.
Really sound like Jesus.
Yeah. Oh man, they already prayed for the sick.
Yeah. And then you're crossing off the thing.
All right. Who's left? Orphans? She got orphans.
Yeah. But we're meant to be present.
Yes.
And a couple of years ago, one of my friends, she just called me out. She's like, every time we're talking, I can see you looking away. And I'm like, dang it. That is something I can struggle with. And so learning to really care and one of my goals, like I heard someone say, you should have a goal in every conversation you're having. And so most of this, it's not like a big old goal that you're trying to go, but like a generic goal. So for me, one of my generic goals is that in every conversation I have, I want people to be blessed by it. I want people to sense that I care for them and that I want to know them better.
Yeah.
And so when that became one of my focuses in conversation, it led my approach to be different. So instead of thinking about what I was going to say, it turned into me listening to what they were saying and caring about what they were saying because I wanted to get to know them. And then a secondary goal is, what can I learn from different individuals? Because people have a wealth of wisdom that they can pass on to you and you can grow from. And learning to be teachable in every moment is also something that just having that longing. So looking at conversations, how can I care about this person? How can I benefit them? And then what can I learn from them? How can I grow with them? Because if someone feels like an expert, they're going to talk a little bit more. And so for me, one of the basic strategies I've used, and it started in that time frame of when I was in Bible school and I was wanting to get to know people, have them feel like I care. I started to think of how can I do this in a like strategic sort of way. And so for me, I developed 5 questions that I would strategically go through with a person. Because they say that the biggest goal in a conversation to make someone feel, that someone feels like a part of this conversation if they are talking more than you are.
Yes.
So the goal is that they are talking more than you are.
Which we actually talked about before the podcast.
Yeah, we did talk about
I was like,
that.
You should be the one talking, not me.
And then I was all like, but that's kind of the opposite of what we're talking.
Yeah, we're hypocrites on this podcast.
We are a little bit. But
so did you come up with the 5 questions on your own?
I did, actually. It was just like, it was a random, like, kind of like God moment, I guess.
Nice.
Like for me, it was just like, and it's nothing like revolutionary.
Sure.
People do stuff like this. I would discover.
Well, let's treat it like it's revolutionary. I think I have a little sound here. Hold on. All right. So instead of the way that I wrote it down was be interested, not interesting. Yes. Nobody cares anyway. So just be interested in the other person. So these are your 5 questions to be interested. Let's see if this is a cool sound effect.
Ooh.
Well, let's try it again.
That was very delayed.
Yeah, well, I didn't know I had to turn it up. Ooh.
Yo, this is like an epic movie.
Let's try it again. Ready? All right, 5 ways to be interested, not interesting.
So really, the purpose of the 5 questions is to find someone's passion. For me.
Oh, that's good.
And so
say it again for the Baptists in the back.
So the purpose is finding someone's passion.
Cool.
Because what I try to do is I have 5 things that I can talk for 15 minutes about.
Okay.
So like one of them being sports. I can talk about sports for 15 minutes.
No problem.
Without you even saying something, I could talk about sports for 15 minutes.
Sure.
And the point of that is because sometimes people will give you a generic, I'm a sports fan. Mm-hmm. But then as you start to talk to them, you're like, they really don't care.
You know, you like fishing way more.
Yeah.
Is fishing a sport?
To some people.
Activity, hobby.
It's an activity. Yeah, it's more of a hobby. Yeah. But to some people, that's a legit sport.
Yeah.
So not.
Which is more of a sport, that or cheerleading?
Cheerleading, for sure.
Oh, hot take. Hold on.
Yes. I'll say that. Did you see that like Netflix show about the cheerleaders?
Yes.
It was like Bring It On or something. Like, it wasn't Bring It On, but
it was like a documentary, right?
Yeah, that thing is legit.
It was like what was the show with the little girls who were dancers?
Oh,
and they had
cheer moms or whatever.
Yeah, whatever that dance moms.
Yeah.
It felt like that, but for cheerleader, like they grew up and became cheerleaders, and that's what I was watching.
It was wild, man. The stuff they do, that is a sport, dude. Like I couldn't do.
I'll give them that, dude. The guys are so jacked.
Oh my gosh, dude.
I'm like,
they're just pressing these girls
with one hand. Now the girls weigh 62 pounds.
Yes,
that's fine, but some of them have like one on each arm.
I know, dude. Good for them, man.
See, we can talk about cheerleading for 15 minutes.
Yes, I know. And so the goal is that you are trying to find something that they're really engaged in. Because as we said, the goal is that you become the listener and not the talker. Mm-hmm. Because if they feel like someone's invested in the conversation if they're talking or not.
Yeah, that's good.
And so there's so many times, especially as a youth pastor, where I would be like going up and to a random student on a Wednesday night, trying to get them connected, trying to make them feel like they have a spot there. And I would talk to them about different things. Okay, so you say you're into movies. What type of movies are you into? Mm-hmm. And just start talking about different movies I'm a fan of. And if you find something that they light up, you can almost see it in people's eyes. You can almost see it in how they like respond to you.
Yep.
And then they will start to talk, because then that's the point when you see them light up in the midst of the conversation, that you're able to be like, okay, well, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
And you start to ask questions to get them talking.
But sometimes that's it's a trek to get there. Like you really got to dig it out. So if you haven't committed on the front end, I'm going to make sure I find this person's passion. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be a good listener. I'm going to dig. Then what we do is when it's hard, we just move on.
Well, and that's why I have 5 questions, because with 5 different ones, normally I'm going to find something that someone's passionate about in those 5 questions. So it's not just sports. It's then going to music or going to movies. So there's 5 different passions that I have that I can start the conversation with, begin to hold it. If they say they are into those things, I will begin the conversation, and they will start to feel comfortable with me as we identify with, okay, cool, we both watched Airbender last night. That was a cool show. It's kind of
when did that drop?
It dropped like a couple of days ago.
Really? Well, right now when we recording, it's February.
Oh, yeah.
It's February, so it'll be out for a couple months when this comes out. But I didn't even know it dropped. I just saw like a clip, and I've been looking forward to it for months.
I know. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be as good as I was hoping for.
No.
Yeah, I had high hopes. Did
they just drop like 1 or 2 episodes?
No, they dropped a bit. Last night I watched a bit of them, and so I watched.
Is the whole season out?
I don't think the whole season. I didn't get that far, so I kind of just watched like 2 or 3. And so it was okay. Acting's pretty bad, but whatever.
Ooh.
But as we're talking, like there's something we're passionate about.
Yeah,
we can like go there. And then
kids cartoons.
Yeah. So you started to watch Airbender. Did you watch the cartoons when you were a kid?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It was my first foray into like animated, like not like, cause I guess it is anime in a way. And I had always thought like the weird kids watched anime, and then I saw that and I was like, well, that's kind of cool.
And so now I'm hearing about your story.
Yeah.
Now I'm hearing about who you are as a kid, what got you into that, and that you're instantly learning about the person and you start to care about who they are as an individual.
I was alone all the time. I had nothing else. It saved me.
It saved me watching
Airbender.
That's awesome.
It is really true. So what are the 5 questions?
So I tell people, develop them about 5 passions you have.
Okay.
So they can be anything.
Okay, so your 5 passions are?
Yes.
Sports.
So for me personally, I talk about sports. I talk about movies. I talk about music. I talk about work-related content, and then I try to get to know people's families.
Nice. You and I bond over families mostly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if I look back and I'm like, oh, that's what he used on me. Mm-hmm. You use the family.
And pretty much any conversation I have as I'm getting to know people, you can track it back to one of those topics in the first level conversations that I started to have with people.
Yeah.
And so
what if people are like, I want to talk about politics. I want to talk about wrong religions. I want all things that like make people mad.
So all the stuff that people will tell you to avoid.
Yeah, to avoid. Well, that's a good question. Should we avoid anything in conversations?
Well, it depends what your goal is, like, and what level of relationship you're at in the conversation. If you're just getting to know someone, yes, I would say probably avoid those at the beginning, because you don't want to like have divisive things that are going against you. And in the theme of evangelism, as you are really spreading the gospel and getting to know people, like you're going to be far more effective at that. Like we've talked about tabletop conversations with your waitress or random people you meet, but the best evangelism is going to happen through relationships.
Yeah, and you and I both practice, and you know, I learned it from you years ago, and then I've tried to get good at on my own. Is if you're talking to a waitress, can you make or waiter or whatever? Can you make them feel comfortable and get to know them without it being like this weird tension?
Exactly.
And I have had so last night I was flying back from Dallas, and there was a guy came sitting, and he said, he was like, man, do you think they'll change one of these to NASCAR or whatever? Now, I don't give 2 rips about NASCAR, but this guy was sitting down, and I had an hour till my flight, and I was like, I don't know, man, but you know, where are they at? You know, where are they racing? Atlanta. And he starts talking about whatever. So I found his passion, right? And then he was like, do you mind if I change it? And I was like, dude, I don't give a rip about NASCAR, but I'll become a fan of NASCAR just watching you be a fan of NASCAR for the next 30 minutes. What do you think? And he's like, deal. And he sat down. Then we just started talking about, he was talking about NASCAR, and he's like, yeah, we're trying to get back home. And is that your son right there? And then we started talking about his son, and his son has just came from this quarterback football thing, and you know, and we really got into it. And he's a writer for the Associated Press.
Dang.
Following all the politics and whatever. And we started talking about like his background with church and how he's never had it and blah 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 blah. And that happens in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But I think just being available is in listening. I did very little. I forget how they talked it. Reference, when in doubt, reference again. So like something the person has said, reference that thing. So whether it was NASCAR, that's your son, football, he's talked about, my son and daughter are doing blah, 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 blah. And we kind of ran out of stuff with his son. I was like, well, you said you had a daughter.
Okay.
Is she athletic too? Oh yeah, she plays softball. I referenced something, but you have to listen to be able to pull a reference out.
Well, and that's an active listening technique that they say to do, and that's like regurgitating the conversation, going back through it, and going back to something that referencing strategy. They say to do that, like so that you can say and know that you listened by kind of recapping the conversation.
But if you're saying, my brother was a quarterback, like you're not listening. You're prepping that, and you're trying to find the coolest story. Instead, just be quiet.
Yeah.
Like if nobody knows much about you, but you know a lot about other people, that's a pretty cool way to live, I think.
100%.
I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to become better.
And, I've had this modeled to me my whole life through my dad, but I never really valued it until I got older. And so it was something that then I had to work on for myself. Mm-hmm. So, and you're not going to be the greatest conversationalist if this is something that you struggle with, but even I've seen some of the biggest introverts in our ministry that I've worked with and gave them like kind of this 5-question approach. They became like very influential in different contexts because they started to work it. And it was awkward for them at first, but then as they went, you'll get better at it and you'll learn how to have conversations. And so I think it is a skill that you develop over time, little by little.
It makes you likable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because you're interesting. Interesting makes people pay attention, but it doesn't make people like you.
No.
And so I think, especially when I was younger, I was so desperate to be interesting.
Yeah.
And to prove that I was valuable because I saw that as value. That now that whole thing is flipped on its head. And I'm like, man, my job is to be like the hero maker, the help lift other people up, to help them shine. And I have to learn about people to make that happen. And you'd be amazed at the people. I remember we went to, it was my old church, and I was youth pastor, and this is kind of when this whole thing started for me. And so I was like, you know what? Who are the people that I always shake their hands on Sunday morning as the pastor, but I don't know anything about them. And one of them was this old lady, and I walked up, and I was like, hey, what's blah, blah, blah. How are things, blah, 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 blah. And long story short, she was one of the very first Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders.
Holy cow.
The original squad.
Oh, my goodness.
She was on the original squad. And the next Sunday, she brought me a picture, and she was like, see, you don't believe me? And this old lady, all I had known about her was that I had to put a pillow on her chair every Sunday because if not, like, she had all these medical issues. And I found out she was the original Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. Like, how bananas is that?
That is
like, you
wild,
never
man.
know who's sitting across from you, and it's really cool to find those things out. Yeah. So, do you have any other tips and tricks that you're like, these are crushing?
Well, I think it's important that you are like engaging with them by having eye contact and like looking at, because they say watch, like not only listen to what they're saying, but also listen to how they're saying it. And so having eye contact with them, making sure you are paying attention to their social cues.
I'm looking right in your eyes right now.
Yeah, I know. It's very intimate. So, but it's like learning, okay, are people into this? Do they want to pull away? Are they ready to get out of it? And it's so funny. I have this one story where this one girl in our youth ministry, she, my first interaction with her was pretty awkward because she comes into our youth ministry and we would have small groups at different points in the service, and they would, if they were new to the youth ministry, they would send them out. And so I was in my small group already, and the person that would disperse people sent her and this other guy to our group. Okay. And this lady, her name's Moira. She's in she looks straight up like Moana, right? Okay. She is, that Pacific Islander feel. And this other guy that came up with her was also Asian. Okay. And so my first interaction was like, hey, are you guys brother and sister? And she's like, did you only say that because we're Asian? And I was like, kind of. And instantly I'm like, no.
Would I be wrong?
Would that be wrong? It's because it's not like we have a ton of Asians in our youth ministry. And like,
you were like, yes, diversity.
And so she was like, and it was so awkward. But like I continue to like throw out bids. And what I would also encourage you, especially if you're in a situation like you're talking about old lady with the pillow, you're interacting with them constantly, little by little, I would keep on going up to Moira. And now like we have a great relationship and like it was just something that don't be frustrated by an awkward bit. don't give up on that person.
Yeah.
Like still pursue and still continue to have conversations if it's a setting where you're going to be in a relationship with people. Because say someone's in your classroom and your first interaction with them is awkward and not good. Don't let that dissuade you from approaching them again. There's other things that you can connect with them about. Find the piece of connection, and as they start to feel that you care, they're going to start to open up.
Because it's if you keep pushing through after you've earned that credibility of kind of going through the awkwardness, it can become a callback. You can be like, hey, remember that one time you thought I was racist? And you're super excited about it.
And now it's become this place where we kind of reference it. We laugh about it all the time. Yeah. And it's so, and now we're super connected.
That's great.
Yeah, it's awesome at this point. So
I do a method that I call it the deep dive, where I just, I will take one thought, like you said, you want to find what they're passionate about. I don't even care if they're passionate about it. I'll take just one thing that's like a nugget of interesting thing, and I will dig on that thing. Jonathan, he gets this one from me all the time, where he's like, yeah, we went to this thing. And I was like, oh, great. Did you guys eat while you're there? Yeah, what'd you eat? And, well, we had this. Was it the best burger you've ever had? No, not really. Okay. Well, what would have made it better? And you almost create a topic where there is no topic, just by being super specific with something. And then I've just found that it leads to something. Yeah. You just dig deep enough on a topic, you'll find something fun. So that's like one method I have found, especially if it's somebody that is older than me, because I think when you are younger, people assume you're not interested in what they have. They assume you're just a young, stupid kid. So I am getting older, so I know I'm becoming on the other side of that. But, but it's super nice. This doesn't work as well with kids.
Okay.
My kids, I found, like, how was your day at school? It was fine. Well, and if I keep asking questions, they don't care.
Yeah.
Because it's not something they're passionate about, like you said. So kids, it's different. But adults, I think you can almost create something if you just keep, hey, what is that? And keep poking around.
No, that's awesome.
So that's the dive-in method for me. You got any more?
Other methods you're saying? I think the biggest key in wanting to connect with people is just putting yourself out there and not being worried about it. And so
taking the initiative, doing the pursuit. So to that end, if someone's listening, how can they assess themselves and see if they're good or bad? Or everybody's got room for improvement. But some of us, especially if you're extrovert, you might think that you're good at this, and people really hate talking to you.
Yeah.
And you probably don't even know it, just because you walk in, you own the energy in the room, and that feels good. You're the most dominant presence. But how do you know? You said, when someone else is talking, they're engaged. Is there any way to evaluate myself that you found?
Well, I would say you can ask the question, what did I learn today?
That's good, yeah.
Because if, like, I had this even this past Sunday where I was kind of checked out a little bit because I wasn't doing a whole lot that day in the services. And so I was just going, and I was just ready to get out because I was going someplace. And I realized that at the end of the day, there was a couple of people that lit up to talk to me. And I just did one of those like passing comment zones and just was like, okay, cool. Yeah. It's great to see you.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. And hey, let's talk soon.
Well, not even that.
Let's talk now.
Yeah. But they were like ready to engage. And I was like, man, I was bypassing people, and I didn't learn anything today. Yeah. I didn't get connected. And so in different conversations, you should be able to learn something from each individual one, like learn something deeper about them, learn something that they were interested in, what happened in their lives that week. And I think that is a great place to engage as well. Like, what'd you do this weekend? And then like take your technique of the deep dive down those different trails, because most people, I should say, will love to talk about what they did. And
people like talking about themselves.
Exactly.
We all do. We all like, especially if you're taking the pressure off you having to load up the question. If somebody else is asking, you're like, oh yeah, I can answer, I can respond. That's always really nice. It is really easy to do just the Passover thing, and because we're busy or there's something else that's taking priority. In Mark Batterson's book, Thank You, I'm Sorry, You're Welcome. Is that the name of the book?
I haven't read that one, so I don't know.
Is it on the shelf over here? Something like that. Thank You, Olivia, I'm Sorry. I think it's over there. But he is a great Please, Sorry, Thanks.
Okay.
Really good book, and he talks about the power of those words. But one line in the book that's really stuck out to me is, are you living life at a conversational pace? And with God and with others. And so even if we're not very good listeners with people, I think that translates to our relationship with the Lord, where we don't become very good at listening to the Lord either. And, I might feel led to fast. So then I'm like, oh, fasting, cool. I'll go fast. But it's like, did I dive into that? Did I see where God was creating passion? Because God is alive and active and moving, and so if I just graze over these conversations with God, it's the same thing that happens with people. You don't never find like these deep, meaningful connections. Yeah. And I just love that line. Are you living a conversational pace?
Yeah. And you can only live a conversational pace if you slow down for the most part.
Yes.
And you have to be willing to be with people, take a pause with them, and care. And that only comes, again, with that motivation, your why of caring about them.
Yep.
And if you slow down, you can actually take time to get to know them. And so you got to be willing to not be in a rush, to not run to the next thing, to be present in the moment with them, look them in the eye, be with them, hear their story.
I don't know about you, but I've found myself lately, I'm 32 now, caring a lot less about, what I do, what I accomplish, my accolades in life. And that was all I kind of, in all of my accolades, I've always had a good heart behind them. It's always been like, man, I want to help Jesus and all that stuff. But who I am as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a person that this guy met at IHOP in the airport, like, I care about that way more now. And if I'm going to be a good person and I'm going to have moments, I want God to have moments where God's going to use me. I have to be a person who's willing to create moments and be open to things. And I get really sad, especially with, Gen Zs and alphas and all that, because I think they don't want to engage as much in the moments. And there's easier ways to communicate, but I don't know if there's a better way to engage than face-to-face.
Yeah, and you think about Jesus with the woman at the well, where he saw her, he noticed what was going on, and he engaged with her in that setting. And that was a complete awkward situation.
Yeah.
It was a lady. He was a minister. Like, he shouldn't have been talking to her, but yet he engaged with her. And out of that moment came one of the most known stories in the Bible, because like Jesus was willing to engage with this woman. He went out of his way to engage with her. And so for us, making sure that just because it's awkward, we don't run away from it, that we take the time and we care and we learn about the other people. So,
and usually we do the second level question way earlier, but I think it goes really well right here. So kind of to close the podcast,
okay,
I'm going to ask you the question that might not have an easy answer. Where are we getting it wrong? We've said not listening to stuff, but if we dig a little deeper, where are we getting it wrong when it comes to engaging with other people, in your opinion?
Where are we getting it wrong?
Yeah.
I think the biggest place we can be getting it wrong is we are looking for people to meet our needs instead of looking for ways where we can help meet their needs.
Come on, man.
Yeah. And
that's
so
good.
We will be trying to do things to help us out. And if you can be someone that really can care, and I know this has been the theme going over and over again in this, but if you can be someone that really cares about them, and you can look, how can I meet someone's need? How can I come alongside them? They're going to want to engage with you again, because we, like you said before, we want to be wanted. We want to be needed. We want to feel affirmed.
Yeah.
And so if you can help add value to a person, if you can come alongside them and speak life into them, they are going to want to continue to connect with you. And then that's going to propel you to be able to speak life into them in other avenues. Like some of the most intense gospel conversations I've had with different individuals was based out of like them sensing, like learning a little bit more about their family or their stuff that's going wrong. And then out of that, I'm able to share some of the hope that I've received. And so I think learning to have these conversations is so important because it propels us to take the gospel to them. But if you're worried about what you can get out of a conversation, then it's going to end right there, because people, they want to know that they're going to be taken care of first. And so
that's really good. That's convicting to me, because even if I have a good motive, if it's about me, if it's not as genuine. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's something I can always call myself back to, no matter where I'm at, no matter how long I've been pastoring. And us as pastors, we're professional talkers in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think you and I are both, I would say we're both pretty good at connecting to people. Mm-hmm. We're both pretty good at preaching from a stage. We're both pretty good at talking to strangers. But even that, what you just said there, that hits me right in the kisser. So, if you have a second and you're listening to the podcast, I just want to encourage you to think of 5 things, like TJ said, to take a second and ask yourself, am I the kind of person who cares about other people first? Am I trying to find what makes them tick? Am I their joy, their passions? I love how you said that earlier. All the things that we discussed, and we gave some practical tips, having your 5 things, deep dive into conversation, reference things that you've heard before. Any other things that we talked about that you think are like little tricks and tips real quick?
I'm laying a goose egg with that right now. So
contextual clues. So like talk about whatever's in the room, mm-hmm. paying attention, eye contact. All of those are good things. Yeah. They're really good things, but they have to start from the heart. And that's one of the things I like about second level questions is we always dig deeper, but really when we dig deeper, it's like, oh, it's the same basic principles.
It is.
There's no new miracle sentence.
No.
Right? There's no cure to having awkward conversations. You just got to get good at the basics.
And the thing is, even if you're great at it, you're going to have awkward conversations.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And be okay with it. And like, not be dissuaded by a bad experience, but to continue to go back. Because like we said earlier, that shows you care. That shows that, okay, they dealt with the awkward and they're coming back. That's interesting.
So I'm going to give you a really specific thing to do.
Okay.
Can you look into that camera, pretend that you're talking to one person, mm-hmm. and give them your 2-sentence takeaway for today? You'd want them to leave knowing this.
I think what I would really encourage you to do, care about people, want to learn about them, understand them a little bit more, because by understanding them and becoming a great listener, they're going to really understand that you care and feel loved by you. And when they feel loved by you, they'll want to keep talking to you.
Love it. You mind praying us out?
Yeah, of course.
Let's do it.
Well, Father, I thank you that you are someone that cares so deeply for us. And Lord, that you want to know us and you want us to reveal ourselves to you. And just as you have that desire where you know every hair on our head, where you know the things that make us passionate, Lord, you want us to have that same love for those around us. And the way that we love you, we're called to love others the same way. The way you loved other people, we're called to love them the same way. And so, Lord, help us to do that. Help us to care for every individual we meet with. Help us to have the goal is, how can I be a blessing in this conversation? How can I uplift someone in this conversation? And Lord, by doing that, Lord, I pray that we will become effective ministers of your word, that will become effective at helping people follow Jesus in deeper ways. So be with us, guide us, help us to not run away from the awkward, looking at you as your example and how you went through awkward things. So let us be inspired by that. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. You heard it here from TJ. Be more awkward, be less interesting, and love people. Guys, I hope this helped you. Now go and share faith better. Peace.